Good morning. Good morning. I want to start off today by thanking our life groups. Gosh, life groups, you guys did such a great job this semester. It has always been our vision. Let me tell you why I'm excited before we clap, then we'll clap together. It has always been our vision to have our groups making a difference, finding a place in the community to serve and to love on the city really well. And for the first time, we actually accomplished that vision. So everybody, we can clap now. Like, that's a great... The Torres group did a food drive for Pearland Neighborhood Center. The Johnsons have been volunteering regularly at Forgotten Angels. The Sutton group, we've adopted Carlson Elementary School. It's one of the only Title I schools in our district. The Morton group just completed a mission project at Counseling Connections for Change. You'll see a lot of pictures up there because they got me a bunch yesterday. The LaMotta group, they've been working with Free the Captives, and I have a big project that we're going to talk about in the middle of the sermon from Free the Captives as well. And the Duke Life group has been working at the Well Food Pantry down in Manville. We are so proud, so excited, so thankful that your groups have jumped on board to start making a difference in our community. And I've got to thank Francis Caballero, who has done so much work putting that together. So please give Francis a hand. That is a huge deal. Thank you, Francis. Now she's going to be mad at me because we point her out in the service. If you have your Bibles, we're going to go to Judges chapter 17. Like Lindley said, these are, let's see, would I call them the worst chapters in Scripture? Yes, I would call them the worst chapters in Scripture. These are some of the oddest, some of the most violent chapters that you're going to see. And we've covered the whole book of Judges, and the whole book of Judges has not exactly been a walk in the park. So now we're looking at these last 4 chapters, and what you're going to see is just kind of the complete devolution of Israel. Like, what happens when they have kind of continued the path, the trajectory that they started, all the way back in the beginning of the book. Remember, let's just go back over it real quick. At the end of Joshua, they have taken the land. So they've gone in and they've taken the land. Most of the land's theirs. They're just going to start dividing up and conquering their specific areas. And then time after time, they fall away from the Lord. Time after time, they call out for the Lord, and the Lord hears them and sends a judge to save them. But every time it gets a little worse, a little worse, a little worse, a little worse. Till last week we looked at Samson. Samson, we said, was a lot like Breaking Bad, man. He started off like he could be good, and it just went way downhill real fast. And then Samson destroys the Philistines, and as he destroys the Philistines, Israel's left without a judge. They're left without a leader. And what you have the last 4 chapters of Judges is kind of these little hodgepodge stories that are just going to illustrate how bad it's gotten. So you're excited for some bad news today. Today we're going to talk about really kind of an idea of, well, if you look around, the political process has already started. You know what I mean? Have you started seeing all the commercials? Everything is going on. We've got, 2,900 people running for the Democratic nomination at this point. We got Donald Trump ready to, he's getting ready for his run and his impeachment hearings as we're going through it all, putting the two things together. There's just a lot happening politically. There's a ton of turmoil in our country. There's a whole bunch of just junk out there, and we're kind of in this place where we have to figure out what's real, what's not. We look at the news, and it's really hard to tell. Frankly, I say this all the time. Like, don't just trust one of your news sources. Don't go to MSNBC. Don't just go to MSNBC. Don't just go to Fox News. Don't just go to CNN. Don't go to, you got to kind of, because everybody's kind of got their own opinion and bias, you kind of got to span the field, and you got to figure it out on your own. We're dealing with this crazy news cycle. Then, we're just kind of in a country where things kind of seem like they're, a little out of control. It just feels, gosh, man, I'm just struggling with our country right now, frankly. I've said this before. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I vote independent. That's where we live. But there's a few things that we really care about. Like, we are 1,000% pro-life. We babies in the womb, they matter. We want those babies safe. We want those babies whole. But the more, like, the laws that end up getting passed day after, seems like day after day, that seems like it's getting harder and harder. Like, the babies, the most innocent, are the ones who are kind of left out to dry in some instances. We're dealing with all kinds of political divide, racial turmoil, maybe worse than I've ever seen in our country's history. It just feels like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And what we end up doing is we kind of end up latching on to whoever might give us a little piece of what feels like good news. So much of what we end up doing is we end up latching on to maybe any candidate, maybe any person, maybe anything, maybe any place that might give us just a little bit of good news, something that feels good to us. We know the last election cycle, we got into this really cool thing where we had this fake news going on. Fake news, and it could share it all over Facebook. Hey, just a little caution, it's going to start happening again. Be careful what you share on your social media, okay? Please be careful. Please don't be crazy. And we're looking for anything that might seem like good news for us. Same thing that was going on in Israel back then. Judges chapter 17 is where we're going to be at. We're going to walk through some chapters. We're going to make some points along the way, a little different than normal. I'm going to make some points along the way because it's a lot of chapters. Don't worry, we're not going to read it all. But here it is, verse 1. There was a man of the hill country of Ephraim whose name was Micah. And he said to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that were taken from you, about which you uttered a curse and also spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me. So here's the thing. Micah, he's a guy. He stole money from his mom, just went and took it from his mom. Then his mom cursed the person whoever took that silver and just said a curse out loud. I curse the person who steals this thing. And Micah feels bad. So Micah has some guilt. So then Micah returns it. And his mother said, blessed be my son by the Lord. And he restored the 1,100 pieces of silver to his mom. His mother said, I dedicate the silver to the Lord from my hand for my son to make a carved image and a metal image. Now, therefore, I will restore it to you. So what Micah does, he steals it, hears a curse, then gives it back to mom. And mom says, oh man, my son's so great. I've got a good son. He gave me the money back. He also stole it from you, but this is what happened. And then, so I love my son so much, and I'm so thankful to God, Yahweh, the God of the Bible, our God. I'm so thankful to him that what I'm going to do is we're going to create an image of Yahweh. Like that is what we are going to do. Real quick review of the top 10, the 10 commandments. Is it okay to make an image of God? Real quick, you guys? Yes or no? That is a big, some of you are like, I'm not sure. We're going to, maybe 10 commandments is our next series. No, you are not allowed to make an image of God, but this is what's going on with Israel. This is like the top 10, and they have forgotten this fact that they are not supposed to do this thing. 10 commandments, they've forgotten them. That's a problem. Verse 4, so when he restored the money to his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave it to the silversmith, who made it into a carved image, a metal image, and it was in the house of Micah. Verse 5, and the man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod and household gods, and ordained one of his sons who became his priest. In those days, this is a big phrase, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. So what he does is he makes a statue, makes several statues, takes his son and says, you will be a priest. Gives him an ephod. That's kind of priestly garb. Only certain people in Israel are supposed to have an ephod. You are certainly not supposed to make a new one. And they have put it on, and they've given it to his son, just said, all right, you're going to be a priest now of our house with all these gods and Yahweh. Sounds good. No, it doesn't. That's not good. This is a problem. This is a big problem. And it's actually a problem that I think we face in America. I think it's a problem that American Christians face all the time. You want to write this down. Number one is going to be what happens when we're dealing with fake good news. What happens when we're dealing with that is we start to redefine God rather than submit to God. When we start to think through this, you're going to see them redefining God rather than submitting to God. Well, certainly God would be cool with this. Certainly God would be okay with that. Certainly God would be fine with this. Certainly God would be, this is going to be good. We are going to honor God by making a statue of him. God would love for us to have a statue of him. That would be phenomenal. Except there's just a little thing where God doesn't want that. So often we do this. We kind of begin to redefine right and wrong. We kind of create a God that cares about and likes and dislikes what we like and what we dislike. We kind of take those aspects of God that we really think are awesome, maybe his strength, maybe his power, and we amplify those things. And then we want to push off to the side his compassion or his love. Or maybe you want to amplify his compassion and say, all right, he is compassionate and good, and he is gracious and kind, but I don't really want to talk about his holiness. And what too often American Christianity tries to do is we try to redefine God. We look at our surroundings and we say, well, let's just go with what makes us happy and the things that we think are true of God or that we like of God. And it would be a lot like if someone were to write a biography of you. Somebody comes to you and say, I want to write a biography of you. I'm gonna write a biography about you. And naturally you'd be flattered, right? All right. Maybe it's going to be a bestseller. I'll get some residuals. This will be great. But the writer comes to you and says, all right, biography about you. We're going to use your name, but you have 18 cats. And you are a deep sea diver. And also a skydiver simultaneously. You skydive and then you go directly into the sea. That's what's that's your world. That's what you do. And then on top of it, you're also a baker, and you are a top chef, and you are a golfing pro. You're doing all of those things. And on top of it all, you are a hardcore vegan. And you look at yourself and you're like, none of those things are true of me. None of those things are true. That's not who I am. That's not what I do. I don't skydive. I don't like heights. I don't like deep water, so I do not do that. I do not like vegetables that much because we're in Texas. And it's what we do. We recast God in our image, and we just say, God, I like your name, but let me tell you what you're about. That's just not the way it works. It's just not the way it works. You don't get to tell God what he's about. You don't get to tell God what he's going to do or what matters to him. He tells you what matters to him. We don't get to recast God in our image. We're supposed to work to be conformed to his. We're going to move a little bit further down. Let's talk Judges chapter 17, verse 7. Now there was a young man of Bethlehem in Judah, of the family of Judah, who was a Levite, and he sojourned there. So the Levite is kind of a priestly class that is supposed to be helping to take care of the tabernacle and kind of oversee some of the religious stuff within Israel. And so what goes on here is Micah wants to hire him. He said, you know what? My son's not working out, or he needs a little training. So I'm going to go hire this guy to train him, and then he'll be fine. And he hires him with a lot of money. He gives him a lot of money. Well, the Levite actually says, you're not supposed to do this, but what does it pay? And Micah says, it pays a lot because my mom gave me a lot. And he goes, all right, then I'll do it. Verse 13, then Micah said, I know that the Lord will prosper me because I have a Levite as a priest. So here's what he does. He goes and hires someone, says, all right, this guy's going to lead my household God collection. He's going to wear the ephod. He's going to help my son learn. He's going to do all of this stuff. And, we'll just keep going from there. It'll be better now. I've got a Levite guy with me. This reminds me of a story a friend of mine told me. He was getting on a plane. As he's getting on a plane, he was sitting next to this lady, and they started a conversation. She found out that he was a pastor. She comes back at him and says, I am also a religious leader. He says, oh, really? Well, tell me about that. Well, she says, I own a shop, and at this shop, we sell all kinds of little religious, like artifacts and little dolls and little, rosary beads and all kinds of them from all the different religions. So I have this and you have that. So we're going to be fine. Then across the aisle, there's another older couple who, they talk. Their hearing aids weren't all the way in, and so everybody's hearing what they're saying, and they say, I just read my horoscope today. We are going to be fine on this trip. It's going to go well. So we've got horoscope lady, we've got little shop of horrors lady over here, I guess. And then on the other side, there's a gentleman, and he opens up his suitcase, and he takes out two statues of St. Christopher. You know who St. Christopher is? Patron saint of traveling. And so they all start talking about how great this trip is going to be. The plane is not going to go down. We've got a Baptist pastor, shop owner, 2 statues of St. Christopher, and a horoscope that says we are going to be fine. My friend says back to them all like, what do you do? Because that all unravels really quickly. It's not like you're talking to one at a time. It's just all of a sudden everybody's chiming in about their religious experience. And on the jetway in, she goes to him, hey, I've got these special beads. And she gives him the special beads. If you hold these, we are going to be fine on this trip. And that's when he's just like, all right, I thank you for the gift. I will receive it as you've meant it in terms of kindness. But let me tell you something. None of this stuff matters. And the deflation and, because none of that stuff matters. A lot of times we put trust in stuff that just doesn't matter. We care about stuff that we think is going to get us somewhere, is going to take care of us. And really what we're trying to do in all of those little instances there, I think they're trying to use God rather than worship God. So what this fake kind of good news does, this little news that makes us feel good for a moment, really what we're trying to do, I think, in those moments is trying to trick God into doing what we want him to do. I've given what I'm supposed to give. I've gone where I'm supposed to have gone. I served where I'm supposed to serve. I attended when I'm supposed to attend. God owes me. God owes me. The simple truth is that God doesn't owe you. God doesn't owe me. God doesn't owe us. And it doesn't matter how many cool statues you have or rosary beads you have or how many pictures of Jesus you have around your house with blonde hair and blue eyes. It does not matter. You cannot do something that garners God's blessing. Here's the reason. Because he loves you just as you are. You don't need to do. You need to trust. You don't need to have a million statues or to have all the beads or to say just the right prayer in just the right order in order for God to be on your side. You don't need to do that because there's no incantation that's going to grab God's opinion. Too often we think that that's what's going to go on. If I do the right thing, if I act the right way, if I say the right thing, if I do it, then God's got to bless me. It's his job. No, God's job is to be God. Israel's doing this back here. Israel's messing up way, they've had the blessing of God on their life, on their country, the entirety of their time, and they've blown it. We're going to keep rolling. So what ends up happening next is chapter 18. Chapter 18, the Danites, this is another tribe. They've decided, hey, you know what? We need a priest. So they have gone to find Micah's priest, and they've bought Micah's priest. They're just going to go. The priest goes the highest bidder, right? So who's going to pay him more? It's a little like, contract negotiations in the NFL or NBA. Whoever's going to the highest bidder, that's where I'm going to go. Danites take him. It's not going so well. Micah goes after him to bring him back. He wants his priest. He wants his statues. He's like, okay, the priest ended up taking Micah's statues. Just took him away. And Micah lost his statues. All the statues that he was worshiping, the priest stole them. What a jerk. And he just kind of comes to this point, like, what do I have left? And then what you end up seeing next is this 19, 20, 21 is kind of like what life looks like when you've just completely abandoned, when you've just kind of lost it all. Here it is, verse 19, 1 through 3. In those days, when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite was sojourning in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, who took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. And his concubine was unfaithful to him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there 4 months. Then her husband arose and went after her to speak kindly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys, and she brought him into her father's house. And when the girl's father saw him, he came with joy to meet him. So here's what's going on. There's a Levite. Remember, a Levite's in charge of kind of he's kind of a priestly religious leader in Israel. But he's got a concubine. You know what a concubine is? We'll just go like fake wife, okay? Not a full-fledged wife, kind of a fake wife, kind of a little like a mistress, but like an official mistress. So religious leader, let's just get it real straight. I want to make it real clear. Religious leader in charge of leading Israel toward God has a wife and an official mistress. Understand? Does that sound good or bad? Yeah, very bad. This is not good news. This is a leader who's doing this just openly in front of the entire country, and the country's like, yeah, that's what he should do. The concubine runs away, goes to get her, and then as they're traveling, they're going to this place called Gibeah. And it gets pretty interesting here. Verse 14. So they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. And they turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. And he went in and sat down in the open square of the city, for no one took them into his house to spend the night. So they're just going to the square. Verse 16, and behold, an old man was coming from his work in the field at evening. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim, and he was sojourning in Gibeah. The men of the place were Benjaminites. So this city has Benjamin. That's the tribe. He's coming from Gibeah. This is a guy from Ephraim, and so he's passing through. Verse 17, and he lifted up his eyes and saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, where are you going, and where do you come from? And he said to him, we are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I'm going to the house of the Lord, but no one has taken me into his house. So he's just trying to find a place to stay. Verse 19, we have straw and feed for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and your family, your female servant, and the young man with your servants. There is no lack of anything. So we're just going to stay in this square. Verse 20, and the old man said, peace be to you. I will care for all your wants, only do not spend the night in the square. It's like, you're not in a good place. You're not staying in a safe area. This is not the place for you to be at night. I don't want you driving. I don't want you here. Verse 21, so he brought him into his house and gave the donkeys feed, and they washed their feet, and he ate and drank. So he's letting them in their house. Verse 22, as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, worthless fellows, surrounded the house, beating on the door and they said to the old man, the master of the house, bring out the man who came into your house that we may know him. So sometimes we hear the word know, we read the word know, and you read the word know and you're like, oh, okay, they just want to meet that fellow. They're trying to be friendly. They're the welcoming party. They want, hey, we saw this guy go into your house. Let's just get to know him. We're the welcoming party in the council, in the city. That's not what's going on. This is no like Adam knew his wife. This is no like you get it? This is no like we're going to take him and we're going to rape him. So that's cool. Way to go, Benjamin. Don't worry, it gets worse. Verse 23, and the man, the master of the house, went out to him and said, no, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man has come into my house, do not do this vile thing. Behold, here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. What? All right. Let me bring them out now, violate them, and do with them what seems good to you, but against this man do not do this outrageous thing. Oh. So the guys are really acting like men. False. The owner of the home says, take my virgin daughter. My virgin daughter. And the Levite says, take my fake wife. Do that to them. But the men would not listen to him, so the man seized his concubine and made her go out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until the morning. And as the dawn began to break, they let her go. And as morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was until it was light. And her master rose up in the morning. When he opened the doors of the house and went out to go on his way, behold, there was his concubine lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. He said to her, get up, let us be going. What? Religious leader of Israel. Has a wife, has a mistress. Staying in the city square for a little while. Guy says, no, don't stay there. Come with me. It's not going to be safe here. Stay with me. That guy says, let's take the virgin daughter. I'll send my virgin daughter out instead of you get this treated this way, and you send your concubine out. And then there she is. She's been abused all night. He said to her, get up, let us be going. But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man rose up and went away to his home. And when he entered his house, he took a knife. She's dead. Understand that. She's dead. He took a knife, and taking hold of his concubine, he divided her, limb by limb, into 12 pieces, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. The religious leader of Israel with his official mistress who he's allowed to be abused. This is how far Israel's fallen. One of their leaders does this. Disgusting, gross, vile. Evil, right? Evil. Can we agree this is truly evil in every sense of the word? So what he does is he's mad about it. They hurt my concubine. Not so much the hurting of her, the abuse of her, the murder of her, the rape of her. Not that. She's my property, and this has happened. So Israel, we got to do something about this. So to all the tribes here, sends this package to every tribe. They get this thing. Verse 1 of chapter 20, then all the people of Israel came out from Dan to Beersheba. They're outraged, man, right? They're outraged. They're outraged. This is terrible. including the land of Gilead, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. And the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Israel presented themselves in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 men on foot that drew the sword. Now the people of Benjamin heard the people of Israel had gone up to Mizpah, and the people of Israel said, "Tell us, how did this evil happen?" And so they're saying, "All right, tell us what happened, Levite." So he does. But he doesn't tell them the whole story. He just conveniently leaves out some of the more choice aspects that might paint him in a worse light. So, verse 11, so all the men of Israel gathered against the city. They were outraged. This is terrible. He's convinced them. We're going to go to war. We're going to go take them out. And they were united as one man. Fight breaks out. 400,000 men of Israel against the tribe of Benjamin. Sounds like that's going to be a loss for Benjamin. Except for a while, Benjamin wins. So Israel cries out to the Lord. Then all the people of Israel, the whole army, went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. And the people of Israel inquired of the Lord, for the Ark of the Covenant of God was there in those days. And the idea is just go. You go and they win. They rout them. They take over Benjamin. They destroy everything there. And the men of Israel turned back against the people of Benjamin, verse 48, and struck them with the edge of the sword, the city, men, and beasts, and all that they found, and all the towns that they found, they set on fire. So what happens here is Israel goes and destroys all of Benjamin. This one tribe, Benjamin. They're angry about what happened. Benjamin should never have allowed this thing to happen, should never have happened. We're going to go destroy them completely. So they could destroy them completely. Every man, every woman, and every child. Israel just keeps on going down. And they burn the cities. And 600 Benjaminites run. They run and hide. And so they survive. Then those 600 Benjamites a few months later come back and say, what about our tribe? Now, what Israel's done in the meantime is said, none of you can give your daughters to marry any of them. If any of Benjamites come out of hiding, if they show back up, then you can't let your daughters marry them. They get no wives. They're going to be cut off. Their inheritance is gone. They are not part of our country anymore. We are done with them. But they cry out and they're like, but we don't want that to happen, do we? And Israel's kind of cooled down. You know how that is. Like, it's been a few months and your anger is like was up here and now it's just down here. And you're like, all right, but we did say that you couldn't have any of our daughters. So they convene another council. And they say, all right, who didn't come to war? They narrow it down to this one specific area, Jabesh Gilead, and they didn't come to war. They didn't come to do war with us. So here's what we're going to do. You can go and destroy all of them. We're going to take 12,000 men and we're going to destroy them and kill all their men, all their women, and you can take their virgin daughters from them. Oh, cool. This is what's happening now. Israel says, we got to make this right. We got to have justice. This is justice. This is what justice is going to look like. Benjamin did this, but now we don't want their tribe to be gone forever, so we got to go help. All right, here's another tribe. Just go do a little more ethnic cleansing. So they did that. 400 virgin girls from Jabesh Gilead become wives of the 600 Benjamites, through kidnapping and murder of their parents. Verse 20, and they commanded the people of Benjamin, saying, go and lie ambush in the vineyards. Because there's 600, remember, so there's 200 more that need to be found. So there's another part of Israel where what ends up happening is they kind of have this little dance that goes on. Like the women, just go out into the fields and they kind of have just a celebration. It's like Lilith Fair. And they just go out here and they are just going to party together. So what you Benjamites need to do, you go hide in the cornfields, and when they go do that, you just go take them. These are the leaders of Israel telling Benjamin to go do that. Israel's not doing well. Do we get that? Do we see that? So they do that, and it's called kidnapping. Benjamin doesn't go extinct. And then, here's the best part about Judges. It ends. Abruptly, I would say mercifully. It goes like this. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. What happens when fake good news takes over? Number 3 happens. It allows the abuse of the weak rather than championing their protection. When we just kind of make God in our own image and we just want to hear the good things that we really like, it allows the abuse of the weak rather than championing their protection. They aren't helping. They just take it. We're strong, so as long as we're strong, we'll be okay. But destroy Benjamin. Go take these girls. Go take those girls. The priest does it to his concubine. Israelites are just killing in order to try to find justice. When we dismiss good news, the weak are oppressed. It happens with races. It happens with children. It happens with the fatherless. It happens with girls trafficked. We live in Houston, which is the hub for sex trafficking throughout the United States. This is the place. Largest port. Lots of girls. Lots of girls without fathers who care. And those girls get kidnapped and taken. That's why we work with Free the Captives. There's a lot of great ministries. We work with Free the Captives because they are helping to rehabilitate some of these girls who have been broken, who have been saved out of this and now need extra help. So I want to, this is one of the ways that I want to call our church to help the weak. Help. We can't do it for everybody, but we can do it for a little. And there's a family at Free the Captives. We applied and got permission to adopt a family for Christmas. So this is going to be a CityView wide project. And we'll give you more details later, but the idea is there are 2 girls in this family who have been trafficked. 2 girls. They haven't given us the ages yet, but almost everybody they work with is under 20. One of these girls has a child of her own, the product of sex trafficking. Like, they've been broken. So CityView, what we're going to call you to right now is like, we want to help them. And it's a pretty extensive amount of things that they need. So get ready, and it's going to have to come fast, right, Amy? We have to deliver December 13th. So that means we're going to need a whole mess of stuff. We'll get the list out ASAP. Today, I think, is when it's going to be on our Facebook, and we'll email that as well. But it's going to be like Christmas tree. It's going to be like an entire dinner. It's going to be presents for all the kids, for the family, for the child, for the ones who have been trafficked, for the entire family. We can't do it for everybody because we just can't. Free the Captives is doing this for all their girls they have. They're trying to find churches that will adopt. We're adopting this family. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do everything we can to make this Christmas a meaningful one that helps them focus on Jesus and brings them joy when they've been broken for so long. Details will be coming soon. Please, 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 church, help us to accomplish this goal for them. Because the weak need our protection. The weak need our protection. Christian, believer in Jesus, the weak need our protection. And this is a way where we can go about doing that. We don't just want to live up here and, oh, yep, Christians need to help the weak. Yep, that's where it is. We want to boil it all the way down to say, this is how we're going to do it. Please help us as we get that going. Here's the other thing that happens. Number 4. It brings deep despair rather than excessive joy. When we just kind of create God in our own image, we make this fake good news, this thing that sounds good to us for a second, it just breaks our hearts and it ends up destroying us. Do you think Israel's happier now or back when Judges started? Do you think there's more joy in Israel at this point, at the end of Judges, or back here? When it's the Wild West, or when there's organization, when there's a country, when they're doing what God has told them to do? Well, clearly there's more brokenness now. Clearly there's more hurt now. Clearly. And the whole book ends in despair. Right? I'm so glad I chose for us to go through Judges for 10 weeks. I'm so glad it's over. I'm really excited to hear Daryl preach next week, and I'm really excited to start talking about Christmas in 2 weeks. Cannot wait. It's going to be joyful and hopeful and life-giving and we've looked at Judges and it has been like just heavy, right? I want to give you just a little extra though. Maybe a little turn here that might help. Because Judges is written, and there's a book that's kind of going on kind of parallel to Judges. It's only 4 chapters. It's really short. Judges, 21 chapters of the devolution of Israel. But here's the thing. God isn't just letting this happen and not doing something on the other side of it. He's not just letting the whole idea of the redemption of humanity die. There's another book, and it's called Ruth. Do you know the book of Ruth? It's being written in parallel with the book of Judges, kind of towards the end. And what ends up happening in the last chapter, the last 3, I'm going to read the last 4 verses. It goes like this. Now, these are generations of Perez. Perez fathered Hezron. Hezron fathered Ram. Ram fathered Aminadab. Aminadab fathered Nahshon. Nahshon fathered Salmon. Salmon fathered Boaz. Boaz is kind of the key player in Ruth. He's the husband of Ruth. You want to find a Boaz. Boaz fathered Obed. Obed fathered Jesse. And Jesse fathered David. David became the king. He brought the nation together. And then David had a son that 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 had a son whose name was Jesus. So in the middle of Israel devolving completely, this is what happens when you aren't seeking the Lord. When you're not going after the Lord, when you're not going after him, when you're not trusting him, when you're not believing in him, when you're not listening to him, this is what happens. But the Lord's still working to save his people, to save the world in a way that no one else understands. Ruth is not an Israelite. She gets grafted in. And she's the great grandmother of our Savior. God's always working. Even those moments when it seems like he's not. He's always working.